As your hand breaking free, I am holding on. I am holding on as you've held on to me. And I don't know, is this the part where you let go and sinking under a shadow? Is this the part where you find out I'm there for you? You find out I'm there for you.
When it's people who do the right thing, they call it being responsible. When it's an insurance company,
Yeah, we're not telling you which insurance company it is. You have to remember. You remember that commercial? Oh, I forgot the year. I don't remember. I thought it was 2008, but it might have been earlier than that. It may have been 98 when that commercial came out, judging by the quality of that video. But it always struck with me just how impactful it is when we do something for someone else. Yet at the same time, isn't it strange, or maybe a sad testament, that we have to remind people to look out for one another? That we have to remind people to be kind, to notice whenever someone's about to cross the street in front of a car, or to actually stop them, to look up. Pretty sad testament, but that is true to our life, isn't it? Most of us go through life with our head down, point A to point B. Or maybe consider this story. A man is on his way home from work on a Monday. He's driving home, and it's just like everyone else. They're driving home, wanting to get home for dinner. The streets are packed. The road that he is on is bumper to bumper, but it's moving. But it's just crazy traffic. Absolutely insane traffic. Maybe a little bit worse than normal, and so he's thinking to himself, man, dinner might be cold tonight. He likes to pass the time on these drives home by calling his mom. It's a good opportunity to talk to her and just have that connection and to pass the time as he's going. As he's going, all of a sudden, traffic begins to stop. He sees the red lights in front of him and really slows down pretty hard. He sees that everyone's heading over into the left-hand lane, and so he joins. His mother notices the tone of voice change because he's getting frustrated, and he explains to her about the traffic and that he's probably going to be late for family time around the dinner table, and it's just frustrating. And he finally comes up to the problem, and it's there's a car that is stopped in the right-hand lane in the busiest time of day and the busiest lane of all this traffic. It's just stopped, and just frustrated and just annoyed. As he passes this car, he looks into the window of this other car, and there's an older lady that is just sitting behind the wheel doing what seemingly seems like nothing. And he just shakes his head disapprovingly. At least she could have called someone. At least she could have moved her car off the side of the road. Anything to not disrupt the whole flow of traffic. Or wondering how in the world I knew that story from your week last week, right? Some of you are thinking, hey, wait. How did Mitch know that was me? The thing is, it's all too real, isn't it? We get in the busyness of life, we get in the craziness of wanting to get from one location to the next, that we sometimes just get frustrated by anything that might slow us down, even if those anythings are opportunities. You see, so often we talk about the need to stop and help people. We talk about that it is the Christian thing to do, but we don't do it. I mean, how many people have you passed by this week without stopping and helping? When the rubber meets the road and the opportunity knocks at the door, how many of us have actually opened the door and said, hey, yeah, let's disrupt my life. Let's change things around. We don't stop and help. We're just as guilty as so many others before, and this is not a new scenario for us. This is something that's been going on a long time. Jesus would even tell a story to help illustrate this point. You may be familiar with this story. In fact, it's probably the most common and familiar story that Jesus told. It's in Luke 10, starting in verse 30. It says this: a Jewish man was traveling from Jerusalem down to Jericho, and he was attacked by bandits. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him up, and left him half dead beside the road. By chance, a priest came along. And when he saw the man lying there, he crossed to the other side of the road and passed him by. A Levite or a temple assistant walked over and looked at him lying there. But he also passed by on the other side. Then a despised Samaritan came along, and when he saw the man, he felt compassion for him. Going over to him, the Samaritan soothed his wounds with olive oil and wine and bandaged them. Then he put the man on his own donkey and took him to the inn where he took care of him. The next day he handed the innkeeper 2 silver coins, telling him, take care of this man. If his bill runs higher than this, dramatic pause, sorry, I'll pay you the next time I'm here. Now, which of the 3 would you say was a neighbor to the man who was attacked by bandits? Jesus asked. Well, the man replied, the one who showed him mercy. Then Jesus said, now go and do the same. Or I prefer the other translations that say, go and do likewise. Go and do what you've heard here. The ancient road from Jericho to Jerusalem was only about 20 miles long. It's not long for our standard. I mean, that's a pretty easy trip for us. Some of you probably covered more than 20 miles just coming to church today. But if you imagine that on walking or a donkey, it takes a little bit more time. It is a trek. It is a journey. Add to that, it's only 20 miles, but it's about a 3,000 foot elevation change through rocky and mountainous terrain. With that, if that weren't enough, in the crags of the rocks, hiding in the shadows, robbers and thieves and no good people would hide, waiting for unsuspecting travelers. So when Jesus would tell this story, no one's surprised that this happens. This is normal. They recognize that this road is not exactly the road that you want to be traveling on alone. Maybe they're wondering at the first of the story, what is this Jewish guy doing on this road alone? He knows better. But he gets beat up along the path. Robbers attack him. They leave him for dead. All hope is lost. Now, he's not dead yet, but he's dying. The hope is gone, but wait, maybe someone will come by this road. Have you ever had a flat tire out in the middle of nowhere, and you're like, surely someone will show up? You know, it's one thing to have a flat tire on 75. You're just going to have a lot of people passing you by, but at least there's people around. I'm always nervous whenever I go to, New Mexico and some of those areas. There's a road, if you've ever been on it, from Clayton to Raton. And I'm like, it's a great, pretty road, but man, I don't want to get caught there, because I might be there for a while waiting on the next person to come by. And there's a few other desolate places, and this is one of those desolate places. Maybe this man is thinking, hey, all hope's lost. But then he looks up and he sees in the distance someone coming. And wouldn't you know, as Jesus says, by chance, this is quite great luck that this man has. A priest shows up. A priest is coming to him. Now maybe he's thinking, what better person to come down the road than a priest? This is a person who is committed to sharing with people the good news, that is willing to talk to people about righteousness and what it means to live in righteousness. Surely, I mean, of all people to pass down the road, I mean, if you're beaten up, you either want someone you want the clergy, you want someone that is just, they have to stop, otherwise they're in trouble with God. Or you want the nurse, or let's go with the nurse. The doctors, no, I'm kidding. Either one of them is fine. You want someone who can actually address the situation. Those are the best people to show up. The priest comes, and Jesus says he passes him by. Now, we don't know why. Jesus doesn't give embellishment into the story. We're left with our guesses as to why. But maybe it has a thing to do with people's behalf. He has to arbitrate with different people. He has to mediate with different situations. This guy is a busy guy. He's got a lot of things going. There are people waiting on him, surely. And I'll add to that, if he goes and checks him out and this man happens to be dead, the priest is now unclean. And he can't perform his duties for the people now. And so why should one man be the cause that all these people have to suffer? I don't know his reasonings. What we know is the priest passed him by. Can't imagine the feeling that this Jewish man had there on the side of the road when the priest passed him by. Sometime later, another man shows up. He may not be a priest, but the guy don't want priests anymore. He saw how those are, but now he sees a Levite. Now the Levite, a little bit different in their role. They are not from the lineage of Aaron, which means they can't serve as priests, but they are of the priestly tribe, which means that the Levites are the ones that are assisting the priests. They're the ones that are in charge of cleaning the temple, cleaning all the utensils. They're the ones in charge of singing the songs and opening and closing the gate at the temple. Like, these are the workers of the worship service. They're not just the guy like Mitch who gets up and talks and then does nothing else all week. These are the people that are actually doing things. Okay? Some of you were the man, and then goes on. Now, I don't know the reason, but I can speculate, and the reason I can speculate is because I have given many of these reasons myself. How many times have I given excuses that sound good or sound worthy or sound anything for why not me? Someone else, they can help. Surely someone else will do this. I mean, I think of even on the same small types of things. It's not necessarily the people helping, but we were driving by on 82 one day and saw a little fire starting in the ditch. And it didn't look very big. And I was like, you know what? My first thought was, I bet you someone's already called. And then I quickly repented of my ways, going, I've had a house fire that started from very similar. You know what? I'm going to call and make sure. Now, as soon as I called, they were like, you calling about the one on 82? Yep, okay, we've heard. Great. It took like 3 seconds. But my first thought, admittedly, someone else got it. How many times do we do that? How often do we become busy, even doing things of religion like this priest and Levite may have been doing the things of religion, and miss the real mission: to rescue the perishing, to give aid to the stranger in need? How many victims have we seen this week? Some of them may not be so obvious as the car broken down on the side of the road or someone holding a sign at the street corner. But how many people have you walked by and you just had this sense, man, they really need some help? And it may be financial. It may be they just need someone to talk to. It may be that they're looking at their phone not knowing how in the world to work this thing that their grandkids gave them. And you know exactly how to help. But you just let them waller in their own unknowing. How many people have you passed by this past week and you never once stopped? You justified it, surely. I got places to be. I got things to do. I got people waiting on me. I mean, I'm heading to church, for crying out loud. I can't be late for that. Excuses, they pile up. So often we, on our journey, and not just our physical journey, but our spiritual journey, we get so focused on going from point A to point B that we miss what God is desiring for us to see along the way. And not just see, but in desiring for us to do. Or maybe we get so wrapped up in the daily business of being good that we forget to be righteous. It's like we want to be so focused on Jesus, focused on Him, that we miss Jesus right beside us. We get this picture that Jesus is always, He's in heaven and He's beckoning us. He's there, and we just need to get there. And in all reality, Jesus is right beside us saying, hey, you see this guy in the ditch? Let's help him. See, that's where the story continues. We know the two dudes that don't stop and help, but that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is the one guy that does. Jesus calls him a despised Samaritan. I don't think Jesus views them that way, but I think the Jews do. And so Jesus borrows their term to maybe really illustrate this point. This despised Samaritan stops along the road and doesn't just stop and look, he stops and helps. We're not told that this man is a paramedic. We're not told that he is a doctor of any sort, and I doubt the first century donkey of the time came equipped with a first aid kit. What it came equipped with was a guy in his travel gear. But this guy took some of his travel gear. My best assumption that we can make here is binding the wounds. He may have had to tear up a shirt that he had. Maybe it was even the one that he had on to give something to be able to bind these wounds. He has some olive oil and some wine, which are used for medicinal purposes. And he takes care of this man. He slows down his journey. This is going to take some time. I'm going to be honest, you're going to get bloody doing this. You're going to get dirty. Puts him on his own donkey. This guy who had the luxury of not having to walk this 20-mile path because he has a donkey he could ride on, gives up his right of riding to the man who can't walk. Puts him on his donkey, takes him into the inn, and continues to take care of him. Okay, this is a beautiful story that Jesus is going, that he sacrifices his personal convenience for the personal care of another soul. After spending the night in the inn, the Samaritan leaves because he does have a place to be. He leaves, but not before he gives the innkeeper 2 silver coins. Both archaeologists and commentators believe that these 2 coins would be the equivalent of 2 months' stay at the inn. When was the last time you gave 2 months' wages, 2 months' stay for a stranger? See what's going on here? This is radical. And Jesus is using this as a point for us. Obviously, there's a level of shock that it's a Samaritan that does this. But I'm not going to get into the whole racial profile and get in it, although there's wonderful lessons that can be said there. We'll save them for another time. What I am going to look at it further is this guy and what he did. 3 people on this road other than the one that got hurt. 2 of them should have known better, but they passed by. 1 does what the other 2 would not. He stopped and helped. This was not only something that Jesus would find praiseworthy, but even the religious law expert that he's talking to and the original hearers would say that this is something praiseworthy. They may not call him by name, they may just call him the man who had mercy rather than calling him a Samaritan. But they recognize that this guy did it right. He stopped and helped, and it ends with this line: "So go and do likewise." Every one of us is on a road, spiritually speaking, but also physically speaking. And Jesus is beckoning us to go and do likewise. What does that mean? Well, it means you need to keep your eyes open. It means you need to start seeing what God is calling you to see. Last week we talked about the places that God tried to catch the attention of the people. But it never stops there. It's not just places that God is calling us to, it's people. It's His work and it's His ministry. And so maybe it's while you're driving down the road, you need to see the person that needs some help. Jesus would also tell a story that I feel hits a little closer to home. I believe it's in Luke 16. Luke 16. He tells a story of a rich man and Lazarus. How this rich man would go about his day every day walking by a guy named Lazarus that was laying at his gate. He was a beggar. He needed some help. He longed for the table scraps from the rich man's table, Jesus would even tell us, but never received. Every day this rich man had the opportunity, but he passed this man by. The way the story goes, they both die and are carried into separate places. The rich man is in torment. Now, we're not told the fullness of the reason he's in torment, but we were pretty sure that part of it is the opportunity that was right there in front of him. He passed by. Any astute reader of Scripture would understand of the story back in of the Samaritan would understand that there's a lot of parallels between what Jesus is saying this Samaritan did and what Jesus was doing. He wasn't just giving them a story for them to try to figure out how to apply. He gave them a story that mimicked his life. How many times did Jesus stop and help people? Even though others were like, hey, come on, we've got to go. You were on a mission here. Don't let that power flow from you in the crowd. Jesus, everyone's touching you. Come on, we got another thing to do. How many times did Jesus stop and help? Go and do likewise. Let's return to the story that I told at the beginning, the all too familiar story. Man on a Monday evening was coming home from work. Traffic was crazy, maybe a little bit more crazy than normal. It was insane. He'd often call his mom on these roads to pass the time. As he's driving, he sees brake lights, traffic slows. Everyone's coming into the left-hand lane, and so he comes into the left-hand lane with them. His mom hears the difference of his voice and asks what's going on, and he tells about the traffic, and he's probably going to be late, and this is how annoying and frustrating it is, because it's already driving in traffic annoying and frustrating. As he comes across the car, he looks in and sees an older lady sitting there at the driver's wheel, seemingly doing nothing. Maybe it was because he was talking to his mom at the time, or for some other reason, he felt an overwhelming compassion in that moment. He said, Mom, I got to go. He quickly pulled over to the side of the road, walked to the woman's car. She rolled down the window. He found out that the car stalled. She has no cell phone in order to call someone, and she couldn't get it started. She just didn't know what to do. So the man, lo and behold, tried to start it. Notice it would not start, was not turning over. So he put it in neutral. He got behind the car, rolled up his sleeves, and started pushing the car into the parking lot. At that moment, finally, when she's out of the way and all the wonderful, gracious, traffic behind them stopped honking, they're honks of encouragement, I know they were. He was able to call, got a hold of this woman's daughter, who promptly came and took care of the business from there, said thanks to the man, he went on home. Was he late for dinner? You betcha. Was his nice clothes that he was in for work messed up? Probably. Was it an inconvenience? But was he blessed? You see, in the busyness of our lives, when we're so concerned of going from point A to point B with no interruptions, no distractions, and just getting there as quickly and efficiently as possible, we are robbed the blessing of helping someone else. Because let's be honest, when you stop and help, you are the one that is usually helped more. There's something about giving that truly affects us. And it's a sad testament that we have to be reminded of that when we come to worship in a sermon. Because we should be reminded of that daily when we give of ourselves, when we stop and help others. And I'm not just preaching to y'all, I'm preaching to me. It's a sad testament that I'm not reminded of this daily because I'm not the one stopping and helping daily. So may we change. May we be the kind of people that when we see Jesus on the side of the road, taking the form of whatever it might be, taking the form of a beggar, taking the form of someone that's broken down, or whatever the situation may be, when we see the opportunity of having a communion together with someone else in the name of Jesus, and we pass that by, may we feel the pang of guilt. But may we change. May we be the kind of people that stop and help, because one day you're going to need it too. And you're going to want someone to stop and help you along the path. So may we encourage that by doing it ourselves daily. So let's start now. We offer an invitation at the end of our sermon for various reasons, but the most clear and concise is we want to help. If you have situations that you want prayers over, you don't have to come forward and be public. The elders and ministers surround this auditorium. If you want to go talk to one of them and just say, look, can we pray? I got a situation. I need some help. If you're going through a piece of your life that you're just like, I don't know, I just need some people around me, we'd love to stop and help. Whatever you might need, we're here. And we will do our best not to be so busy to not stop and help. If you have a need, would you let it be known? Come as we stand and as we sing together.